Yet for some reason, around noon, the name of another girl who hadn't even seen Nolan in a year was given to the patrol to go interview, saying that she was with that group, not Katie. They also gave the name of a couple of other friends who they weren't able to get in contact with. And despite having a picture of a text message from Katie, funny how you didn't share that with Officer Tatum. Probably could have cleared up some stuff real quick, right? Now let's get to the data. Now, at about 1:30 on July 5th, they were doing a flight of drones based on the relation of the last known anchor position of the Atkinson vessel, which I have documented right here. 4:30, Officer Strickland contacted Jennifer Pyrone, who was Wyatt's mother, who told them that he had already spoken to officers earlier in that day, but they were happy to cooperate with any investigation. And she let this officer take a picture of the GPS. Officer Strickland observed the track line showing Pyrone's vessel location on Horn Island, then gave coordinates. I'm going to need you to remember this exact phrasing. It's going to be important later on. Now, this was the GPS coordinates from the picture that the officer took, meaning that these coordinates had to be a different one that was verbally given over the phone by Wyatt. And you'll notice they're quite different. Now, you'll notice that this incident report says the involved entities are Bart Edmington and Jerry Adkerson, not Wyatt. Even though Wyatt is 18, he should be on this report. And you could argue that they were just giving the names of the people that owned the boats, but somehow I doubt that 21-year-old Bart owns that boat. You'll notice on this report that 2 different pieces of GPS evidence were collected. So now we're going to go to the July 8th report where they came and they took those GPS coordinates from both the Adkerson boat and Bart's boat. Yellow is Bart, blue is the grandfather Jerry. You know, the same Jerry that called and canceled the sea tow as the sea tow phone call was being made. Now, mind you, this is 3 days after the police had come and spoken to the mother and gotten the GPS coordinates. Now, Bart had a germane GPS map chart plotter. Jerry's boat also contained a germane GPS map chart plotter. Now, I had to look up the difference between waypoints, tracks, and routes. So waypoints mark specific spots. Routes connect them in a planned order, and tracks record your actual path. Now, according to that GPS data, there is no movement from 11 to 4:30, but we know that not...
If you're worried about someone. Secondly, why did you turn down Coast Guard when they asked if you needed the Coast Guard? If you are sinking, and if there is that shit going on in the background, like what they're asking about is someone dead, you should say yes to any bit of help that you can get, right? I also think it's odd that all of them got rid of their social media. None of them have really had much of an explanation. They do what your typical white people do in those circumstances. Look at the Murdoch case, and there was no one of color in that case. But because they were prominent Caucasians surrounding around that death of the girlfriend, they did everything they could to cover up and get him out of it. The same rules apply to this, and like in my head, the same rules apply to this. They were both situations were boating, and in those situations, someone unfortunately lost their life. But getting back to the Nolan case, hearing that voice, like hearing that recording of them asking for, or just asking if someone is dead in the background, how is it that you're clueless and you have no idea what could have happened to him? That call, like there's a reason why Nancy Grace got her bob fixed to the heavens, honey. That thing wouldn't move in hurricane force winds. She knows something. Her gut tells her something, just like my gut has been telling me something has been going on with this case. It was too weird. It was too weird. And I got to be careful with how I say things, because y'all love to drag me through the mud anytime I talk out against Caucasians. So I'm trying to be careful with how I word this, but before I get in the shower, I've had a long day at work. Before I get in the shower, I really wanted to put a little bit of 2 cents in your head with that, because I commented on Nancy Grace's video and already people have started coming for me, and all I did was comment, why did we call CETO and not 911? And several people commented and said, well, because there was no medical emergency. You fucking racist idiot. What do you mean there's no medical emergency? Open your fucking ears. And do you not hear them in the background asking if someone is dead? Are you that small-minded that you will forego any bit of the facts because you need your story to be the truth, where no one was murdered? If that was your youngin', if the roles were reversed, y'all, my God. My God, as a white person, I can come out and say that. I know good and well if the roles were reversed, y'all would be dragging this through the mud. But because it was a group of Caucasians and it was an African American person that passed away, all of you small-minded, closed, racist people, you immediately want to assume that he died of like natural causes, or he caused his own death, or it wasn't a murder.
A new wave of footage connected to Nolan Wells is putting one question back at the center of this case. What exactly can the videos from Horn Island tell us about Nolan's final hours? Over the past several weeks, photographs and videos recorded by people who were on Horn Island have continued to surface online. Some have been shared through TikTok and other social platforms, while other footage has been obtained and reviewed by news organizations. But there is an important distinction we need to make before going any further. A video appearing to show Nolan, a boat connected to the trip, or people who were there, is not automatically proof of what happened to him. Some of these images are useful because they may help establish a timeline. Others remain unverified. And some have already been interpreted online in ways the available evidence does not support. That distinction matters now more than ever because Nolan's family has been seeking digital evidence from several technology companies, including TikTok, Snapchat, Instagram, WhatsApp, and Life360. Court filings show that the family's legal team requested messages, photographs, videos, location information, and other records that could help reconstruct Nolan's movements on July 4. And that brings us back to the footage. Nolan Xavier Wells was 18 years old, a college football player from Ocean Springs, Mississippi. He had traveled to Horn Island with friends for the 4th of July. It was supposed to be a holiday outing. Instead, Nolan disappeared from the island, and his body was found in the water 2 days later. The basic timeline is not really in dispute. GPS records placed the boat's departure from the mainland at 9:56 that morning. It reached Horn Island at about 11:14. Nolan spent the day there with his friends and other people who had traveled to the island for the holiday. Around 3 p.m., according to one of the friends, Nolan was last seen by people in his group. By 4:31 p.m., the boat he had arrived on had left Horn Island. Nolan was not on it. That single fact has driven much of the investigation. The friend's account has been that Nolan decided to remain on the island after meeting Katie McCormack, a young woman he had been talking with. According to that account, Nolan planned to return to the mainland later on another boat. But Katie's account, as relayed by her sister and later described by Nolan's mother after speaking with Katie directly, is more limited. Katie reportedly believed Nolan was going back to his friend's boat. She did not personally see him board it. She said he told her that he intended to return to his group. That difference may sound small. It is not. Because if Nolan knowingly stayed behind, investigators have one version of his final decision to examine. If he intended to return to his friends and simply never made it back to the boat, investigators have a different problem. And that is why every photograph and every video from that afternoon matters. Not because every clip contains a secret answer, but because the right piece of footage could establish where a person was, what boat they were near, and what was happening at a particular moment. One of the most widely discussed pieces of footage appeared to show a young black man standing on the back of a boat. The man's face could not be clearly seen, but the swim trunks appeared similar to the ones Nolan had been photographed wearing earlier that day. NBC reported that the location matched verified footage from Horn Island, and two people who knew Nolan said the person could be him, although neither could identify him with certainty. That is the kind of evidence that needs to be handled carefully. It may be Nolan. It may not be. The footage can provide a lead without providing a conclusion. Then another video surfaced that may help place the same boat earlier in the day. TMZ reported that footage captured around 11:17 a.m. showed a boat called the Mac Daddy, and later footage appeared to show a similar vessel around 2:23 p.m. The significance is not that the video proves where Nolan died. It is that matching boats and timestamps can potentially tighten the timeline investigators are trying to reconstruct. Think about what that means. A single video may tell investigators almost nothing, but several independent videos taken at different times can begin to create a map of the day. Where was the boat? Who was around it? Was Nolan visible? Who was near the shoreline? And, perhaps most importantly, what happened after the last confirmed sighting? There is another piece of footage that has attracted even more attention. Video obtained by TMZ appeared to show Nolan's friends aboard their boat as it was being towed back from Horn Island after an emergency call. According to the report, 7 people could be seen on the boat, but Nolan was not among them. That is consistent with the established timeline that Nolan remained on the island when the boat departed. The emergency itself is also documented. Someone aboard the boat called for assistance because the vessel was taking on water after its bilge pump failed. The call was made during the afternoon of July 4th, before anyone knew Nolan would eventually be found dead. That is important because the call is contemporaneous evidence. It was recorded while the emergency was happening, rather than being someone's recollection weeks later. The source material reviewed for this case identifies the pump failure and the boat's 4:31 p.m. departure as separate pieces of evidence that fit into the same timeline. But the emergency audio has created another problem. People online have repeatedly claimed they can hear specific words in the background of the recording. Some interpretations have suggested that someone asked whether Nolan was dead. Others have claimed they heard Nolan's name or other phrases. Those interpretations have not been established as forensic fact. That is a critical distinction. Audio enhancement can make background sounds easier to hear, but it does not automatically turn an unclear sound into a confirmed sentence. Earlier analysis of this case has already shown how quickly people can take an ambiguous recording and build an entire theory around what they believe they hear. So if a TikTok creator posts an enhanced clip and places subtitles over a distorted sound, the subtitles are not evidence by themselves. The original recording is the evidence. The enhancement is an interpretation, and the interpretation still has to be tested. That same principle applies to the new footage. If a TikTok user says, "This is definitely Nolan," that does not make the identification official. If someone says, "This proves a crime," the video still has to be examined in context. And if another person says, "This proves nothing," that may also be premature. A useful piece of footage can be neither a smoking gun nor meaningless. It can simply be a lead. That is exactly why the family's legal team has gone after the larger digital record. Court documents show subpoenas were issued, seeking information from TikTok, Snapchat, Meta, WhatsApp, and Life360. The requests include messages, photographs, videos, and location data connected to Nolan's accounts and devices. Imagine what investigators could learn if original files are recovered with reliable timestamps and metadata. A video could establish that someone was at a particular location. A message could establish what someone knew at a particular time. A GPS record could establish whether a person's account matches their actual movement. None of those pieces has to solve the entire case by itself. Together, however, they could make the timeline much clearer. And that is where this story now stands. Nolan was last confirmed alive on Horn Island. His friend's boat left at 4:31 p.m. without him. His phone and keys were later found back on the mainland. His body was recovered from the water on July 6. His cause and manner of death have not been officially resolved, and his family's independent investigation has continued. The internet may want one dramatic video that answers everything. Investigators need something different. They need evidence that can survive scrutiny. So as more TikTok footage, photographs, and videos appear, the question viewers should be asking is not simply, does this prove the theory I already believe? The better question is, what can this footage actually establish? Because somewhere inside the growing collection of images from July 4 could be a detail that helps explain the missing portion of Nolan Wells' final afternoon. But until that detail is authenticated and placed into the larger timeline, it remains exactly what it is, another piece of a puzzle that is still incomplete. And that is where we will pick this up next.